I pride myself on being very independent, which isn't necessarily about doing things on my own. It's about having choice. And when that choice is taken away from me because the app or website is inaccessible, my independence is pretty much gone.
Every day, 1.3 billion people living with disabilities face barriers when trying to access essential digital experiences.
I live on my phone. I use it for shopping. I use it for communication.
I work online. I volunteer online. I do my banking online.
A lot of apps are not designed with accessibility in mind.
Something that should only take me a few minutes ends up taking me an afternoon because it's just not working.
It can get really frustrating when I encounter a barrier. I just see if I can find an alternate website or just completely abandon it.
For me to have better access to digital experiences, it needs to be a fundamental change in the way user experiences are designed.
Let people look at your product before you release it. It's user testing. We just haven't been including people with disabilities.
When it's more accessible and easier, you're more likely to stay on that program or even come back to that website. You're gonna have more satisfied customers, and that's just gonna be better overall for everybody.
If my world is accessible, I am incredibly successful.
Logo, Fable. Make it fable.com.
Say goodbye to manual recruitment. Research, product, design, engineering, and marketing want to talk to users. With Rally, now they can. Introducing Rally's MCP, your research infrastructure, accessible in the tools you already use.
Here's what your team has already explored. Which study template would you like to use? I found 3 in your workspace.
Here's what's happening under the hood inside Rally. Reops sets the guardrails. Everyone else moves fast inside them. When every team can talk to users, better products get built. Rally MCP, available now. Reops Agent, coming July 2026.
kebab? Where are my kebab people? Anna, what do you think? 1 to 10? You gave it a 0 and 1. Oh, 10. Okay, beautiful. All right. What did the Miss Subi? What was that? Do you know what that was? Okay, what about in the middle row? What do we eat? What do we eat? Tacos. Out of 10, how many? It's an 8. Finally a real, we were doing non-researcher scores just now. It's all 10 out of 10, and I want to tell my friends about your enterprise software. No. Okay, cool. All right, come on back, everybody. We're going to kick things off. We're starting a new program. This program is about personal growth, but also a more important type of growth, the kind of growth that delivers profits and revenue and value for shareholders. I'm partially kidding. Cool, cool. All right. Come on back, everybody. We're going to kick things off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, hi, everyone. My name's Alec. I'm one of the co-founders of Learners. I'm so happy you're here. I can see we have some new people who joined us after lunch. Welcome. Before we get started introducing our host for our next section, I want to reintroduce a different co-founder whose name rhymes with Zach. His name is Jack, to tell us a new thing about Tirac. Give it up for Jack.
Thank you, Alex. Alec has been an incredible partner for us here at Tirac. We were here late last night unpacking more stuff for the booth, so once again, huge thanks to Alec and the whole team here at Learners. We really couldn't have been able to do it without them. So yeah, for context, my name is Jack. I'm the CTO here at Tirac, and we're probably a new face for a lot of you. This is our first year sponsoring any Learners conference. So yeah, who are we and what do we do? So we are Tirac. We are a B2B panel provider. So our intense focus is on expert quality and bringing you verified expert profiles. So how are we different than every other panel provider in the space? We've taken the same technology, the AI moderated interview, and applied it to the screening part of the process. So unlike traditional panel providers, instead of seeing drop-down forms and multiple choice questions, we present the experts with an AI moderated screening interview. This means open-ended questions and things like ID verification, as well as pulling on the information about the panelists into our profile and vetting them during the screening process. To date, we have over 100,000 expert profiles, and yeah, all of these have passed domain-specific AI interviews. So if you think there's room on the table to increase the quality of your panel and you're looking for niche B2B recruits, Tirac is your go-to place for that. And yeah, we have the water booth hosted at our venue over here, so if anyone is thirsty or wants to follow up with questions, we're always open to chat. And without further ado, I'll hand it back to Alec. Thank you.
Cool, cool. All right. It's the moment you've all been waiting at least 15 minutes for. It's time to introduce Zoe Glass. Zoe is a friend. We've known her for a few years. Come on up, Zoe. It's better if I can sing your praises when you're next to me. Am I also allowed to say that you're having a baby soon?
I think I look pregnant.
Yeah, so even with that, Zoe's still showing up to help teach this community, curate this program, and help us all learn. Zoe, you're an amazing research leader and a friend, and I'm going to leave now so you can do your thing.
I don't know that it is working now. Great. Yeah.
Something like that. Okay, see you later. Bye.
Thank you, Alec. So yes, hi, I'm Zoe Glass. As you can see, I take growth very seriously. Thank you to the kind people who looked me dead in the eye and said, I didn't know you were pregnant. Guys, I'm due in 3 weeks. We can stop lying. First of all, thank you so much for being here. It is great to see this turnout, this new location, and just people continuing to show up year over year. Now, things have changed a lot in our field. If you joined us last year, we really talked about growth just as, hey, what could this be? right? How do we bring ourselves out of this obsession with the what into the why and how we're driving things forward? But it's been a weird year. I think we've already started to see things like layoffs based on failure to adopt AI and other scary things that raise these questions, even with all the amazing sponsors we have here today of what is research as things scale out of our control or as we share control with others. And I think growth is the amazing answer to that. One of the big things that we've seen the change in is what we call the collapse of the double diamond. If anybody's ever applied for a job or seen someone apply for a job, they have probably put it in their deck. And it's this lovely thing. 2 very convenient diamonds, and you start, and you explore, and you get broad, and you get narrow, and then you get broad again, and poof, we make these amazing things. And it takes 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on the product. And now what we're seeing on the design side is that those 2 diamonds are becoming 1. And we're pushing towards iteration, right? Quick, 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 quick. Where do we go next? How do we make sure it goes there? And I think research is sitting on the side a little bit scared of how do I continue to have influence if things are turning over this quickly? And the answer to that question is growth research. The answer to that question is taking more control before we even get into that diamond in figuring out where we want to go. One of the things you'll hear about iterative of this quick is, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. And if anybody's heard me talk before, I've used this analogy. That's really great if you started on the right route. But if you headed out this morning to climb a mountain and you left the parking lot and turned left and you really should have turned right, you might be able to iteratively get better and closer to that right, but it's going to take a long time for you to come all the way around to the left. So this year we're focusing on growth not as these specific pieces, not as just what we're going to be doing, but how we are going to challenge ourselves to think differently, to think more powerfully, and to think more foundationally about what we're doing. So you're going to hear about metrics. You're going to hear about things around how we appeal to children, how we think about our morality as researchers and what our responsibility is to that morality, and how we think about how to measure things in brand new ways that we haven't wanted to address in the past. You may also look at some of these and say, wait a minute, I don't work with kids, this isn't relevant to me. I promise it is. The challenge I'm putting forth to you today is to be a little bit uncomfortable, push your boundaries, and say, how could this apply to as I adapt to learning and driving and thriving in this new space? So, we are here. We're going to grow together, hopefully not too quickly on all fronts, and it's going to be a great day. And for our first speaker, one that I am particularly excited about, not that I'm not excited about absolutely everyone, we're going to be learning with Emily about kids metrics, something you've probably never thought about before. Certainly in our first 5-minute conversation, I felt just inspired and eager, and I'm so excited to learn with you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Emily, and I'm here to talk to you about responsible, sustainable growth measurement for young people. A few caveats before we begin. First, I only speak for myself, not for any previous or current employers. Second, I don't think your growth metrics are bad. I'm not here to yuck your yum. I just want to let you know that if you want to grow with youth, you have to do it in ways that are sustainable for the business and user well-being. And a lot of ways that we think about growth currently are not sustainable in the context of a youth population. So I just want to talk to you about how to do this right in a healthy way so we can really grow with the next generation. All I'm sharing here are ideas and provocations. I am not an expert. I am a qualitative researcher talking to you about metrics. These are not the answers. I don't have the answers, but as a Libra and a middle child, I have a lot of feelings. So I'm going to share those with you, and I hope they just act as thought starters or provocations for you. And then finally, if you couldn't tell by the side part and the French tuck and the skinny jeans, I'm a millennial, so I love GIFs, and you will see a lot of those, and I pronounce it GIFs. So first things first, you might be thinking, Emily, I don't need to listen to you talk about growth. We have a Gen Z researcher. And to that I say, wonderful. But did you know Gen Z is almost Gen Pop? Gen Z are turning 17 this year. Your teen users are Gen Alpha, who are turning 16 this year. I had my third baby last year. She's Gen Beta, all right? This is baby Phoebe, and she is your future, so please think about her. But in a more concrete, business-focused sense, here's why you need to consider youth. Number one, there are a lot of them. They make up about 16% of the world's population, and they are most likely to be online and have high digital adoption rates. Number two, they're building their lifetime habits right now. So winning them when they're young can pay dividends for years to come. Switching costs are incredibly high once you find something that works for you. Think of all of us who can't let go of Facebook and still call it Facebook. All of you who never got off of Twitter and can't make Blue Sky or Threads work for yourself. All of you who grew up in an Apple household and refuse to try Android. It is hard to switch once you find something you know and love. So please serve your young people now, and you will have, lots of users for years to come. And finally, youth really have an outsized influence on what becomes mainstream. So understanding them now, building for them, seeing what works for them, can actually pay off with growth of other segments in the future. A lot of the things that we all use, like short-form content and ephemeral video, started as teen trends. So I really want you to think about building for youth, thinking about youth. We really can't just growth hack with young people. That's not sustainable or responsible. I don't need you to build entirely different product experiences for them, but it's really important that you think about measuring success differently for them. If you use the same metrics with young people that you do with your general population, you might think that those young people are failing, that they're not valuable to your business. But I promise if you reframe some of your metric, you will see growth with young people and responsible growth at that. So I've shared with you why you need to care about youth, but you might be wondering, Emily, why do you care so much about this? Why is a qualitative researcher talking to me about metrics? So I want to share my villain origin story with you. I started my career at Nickelodeon in television research with a little gal named Dora the Explorer. And then I jumped over to Nick Digital. But always at Nickelodeon, everything we did was in service of kids. They were core to the bottom line of our business. And then I joined Big Tech. I came out and joined a FANG company to help them launch their first under 13 product. It was a communication app, a messenger app for kids, if you will. And we had brilliant cross-functional partners, engineering, data science, PM. Everyone was so ready to take on this challenge, but they had one problem, and it's that they couldn't hear me at all. I didn't know if I had lost my voice in the move from New York to California, or if they were all dog fooding some super top secret noise canceling headphones, but everything I said went in one ear and out the other. For example, in every brainstorm, someone said, let's build streaks. Streaks where you kind of gamify getting people to come to the app every day. You millennials might remember Snapchat or Duolingo. They do this a lot. And every time this came up, I had a visceral reaction. I said, no, don't do that. That's not good. But no one listened. Then my manager pulled me aside and she said, Emily, you can't just tell them what to do. You have to tell them why. I said, oh, okay, I can do that. So I go into the next meeting, I'm ready, and someone says, streaks. And I say, no, you can't do that. For the good of the children. This still didn't land. Finally, my manager said to me, Emily, you're speaking different languages. This is a translation problem. I thought that I was incentivized to build good things for the next generation and to really do right for the children, which I realize is a naive take given that I work in corporate America, but it is still a fight I fight. And my cross-functional partners were actually driven by metrics. One of our core metrics was daily active users. Where did my thing go? Okay, there we go. One of our core metrics was daily active users. So in order to look successful on paper, we had to get kids to this app every day. And that is why they kept suggesting streaks. DAU is a fine metric for a lot of people, but I don't think it's the best for a youth-focused experience. One of the reasons this is because kids don't often have unfettered access to their devices. Device time is often mediated by the adults in their lives. A kid might only get a device on the weekends or for 30 minutes after homework. They might not choose to use your product during that time. This product was focused on under 13s, but the same goes for teenagers. I remember as a teenager, my phone went with my parents at 8 o'clock at night. I was grounded all the time as a teenager. I did not always have access to my device. So the fact that kids aren't always in control of their devices and they will fail to maintain streaks has a few downstream effects. One being an impact on the well-being of your users, of your children. It's going to reduce their feelings of empowerment if they feel like every time they open the app, they have failed to do something because they couldn't get there every day. It might also fuel an unhealthy obsession to kind of check in or try to be on the app all the time. Both of these are incredibly frustrating experiences for users. So that increased frustration might cause users to churn. Another effect is the parent perception. If you think of the headlines, it looks like we're incentivizing kids to spend more time on devices, which, like, let's be honest, we probably were. If a parent sees that, again, the parent who is the gatekeeper of device time for young people, their perception of your product tanks, and they no longer let their child use it. So again, you've lost users. And then finally, just because they don't have full control of their devices, we will not meet a DAO success criteria. It will look like we failed on paper. And if it looks like you fail on your goals, you're not going to keep pouring resources or effort into an experience for kids. So overall, this is just not a sustainable growth strategy. So now I knew the disconnect. I knew why my team was suggesting streaks all the time, but I didn't know what to do about it. As long as DAO was our top line metric, I felt stuck in kind of an endless loop that looked like this. Someone sets the goals, daily active users. We build features to support those goals, in this case, streaks. And then someone like me gets mad. And this was a really vicious cycle for myself until I realized we build for what we measure. We were measuring daily active users, so we built features to support that. Why not just measure something else? I thought my product influence started at the bottom in building goals and ideating features and things like that, when really my product influence needs to start up here. All of us as researchers know our users. We know their constraints. We know their needs. We need to be part of the goal setting for our product to really get into those metrics conversations so we are user-focused from the jump. Why I thought it was like Mark Zuckerberg locked away somewhere making these metrics and these success criteria, I don't know. But it was a really nice PM named Lexi and a data scientist named Ellie. And I went to them with my concerns, both the business concerns and the user concerns, and we adjusted our top line metric to weekly active users. And then no one ever suggested streaks again. That was a big win, and it was that easy. Let me give you another example. One of our other top-line metrics was a metric of engagement, right? How many messages were sent, how many calls were made. Fairly standard, fairly typical. And we saw kids calling people a lot. If someone didn't answer, the kid would just smash the redial button constantly, constantly, constantly. Or they'd send 100 poop emojis in a row. On paper, this looked wonderful, right? Like, this is engagement, we're doing so well. But in actuality, it was a terrible, terrible user experience. The people who were receiving endless messages and calls felt spammed, and they actually deleted the experience. They didn't want to be there. They were being spammed constantly. The kids who were calling someone and weren't getting an answer also felt crappy because their friend wasn't responding to them, so they also churned. So this was a really negative user experience on all sides, even though on paper, it looked like we were exceeding and doing really, really well. So we had to rethink, what is our actual user goal here, and how can we operationalize that? What would a good experience look like that would cause our users not to churn? So we really stepped back and said, what do we want kids to get from this? And we wanted them to be able to maintain relationships when they're apart and to strengthen relationships. And we know this doesn't happen through, 100 spam emojis. We know that this happens through actual conversation. So, click, click, we created a new successful engagement metric. And we thought about what is a conversation, what does connection truly look like? And we thought it was maybe 3 conversational volleys in a contained period of time. Person A, person B, and person A again. And because that was our new goal and that was our new metric, since we build for what we measure, we could now build features that supported this, which better supports youth well-being. So we built a voicemail feature. Early on, if a call didn't connect, there was only a juicy redial button right in the middle. We removed that button, and now there's a voicemail feature, so that if a kid calls someone and they don't answer, the kids can still feel connected. They can let their friend know they're thinking about them with a voicemail. We also built support for ongoing conversation. Kids are pretty terrible conversationalists. They really don't know how to make small talk, so it was hard kind of going back and forth. So we built emojis or frames that might have prompts like, hey, what was your favorite thing about school today? To really help them engage in that conversation. And then my favorite piece, we actually had a little pledge in onboarding that kind of went over the community standards, kind of ways to behave on platform. And we added an item here that said, if someone doesn't answer right away, they might just be busy. It's not a reflection of you. They'll call you back in a little bit, just to kind of set the norm that that's what was expected. All right. I want to do a little shout out, a little brainstorming all together. I recently went to an improv show, so get ready. I want to talk about outbound clicks or shopping. I know that platforms need to make money, they need to monetize, and advertising helps. So outbound clicks on ads or direct purchases look really great for us. But I've seen with teens that they actually fail on this metric a lot. And then they don't look successful. It doesn't look like teens are a good audience for you. You say, oh, we failed with them. Let's deprioritize their experience. We'll get back to them when they're 18. But if you deprioritize them now because they're not successful on this metric, what makes you think they're going to come back and give you a second chance when they turn 18 and might be more valuable to you? So I'd love to hear anybody shout out, why do you think teens fail on outbound clicks or direct purchases? Okay, I can't actually hear anything, so I'll tell you, they don't have money. I think I saw that. If they do have money, they might not have a credit card. They might need parent permission for purchases. Maybe they buy something once, but they don't have boatloads of money to be doing this frequently. So they're going to look like failure for you. They're going to churn out because you deprioritize them. Why would they come back later? So we could rethink, how else can we show the value of teens to your advertisers? Show that teens are important to the growth of the business now and later. I'm not going to shout it out again because I don't know if we have time. But maybe you look at something like the amount that teens are saving for later or sending to their parents who do have money and purchasing power. There are other behaviors that you can explore to show teens value in a shopping journey, to show your advertisers that your platform works, to show growth of the business. And then again, if you adjust this metric, you will build for what you measure. So you might actually build a better experience for teens, something like wish list, or a feature that shares something directly to a parent with a credit card. There are downstream implications of the things that you measure that can be better for the user experience overall. All right, you might also be thinking, Emily, we don't have a good way to operationalize this in business. Oh, I got some red lights here, okay. And you might say, we use a CSAT survey or customer satisfaction to see how our users are liking this, make sure it's working for them and that we've got sustainable growth. And to that I say, wonderful, but have you ever watched a child take a CSAT survey? Because I have, and it's brutal. This is a typical CSAT question. It makes sense. How satisfied are you? There's a 5-point scale with a few text anchors there. I put this in front of children. 2 big issues arose. They have no idea what satisfied means. One said, does it mean cool? Does it mean I'm jealous? A lot of them said to me, playing with slime is satisfying, so like slime? No. The other is the scale. It looks totally normal to us, but to a lot of younger people, number 1 is the best. This scale didn't work. They also tend to ignore text wherever they can. So this whole thing was a mess. We revised it with kid input to how happy were you with how blank answered that question with kind of a visual scale. We actually saw a 50% increased response rate just because of increased comprehension. So again, you need to be thinking about kids as you're thinking about your metrics because they do have unique needs. This is still not perfect. If a kid asks, hey, what's the weather today? And the voice assistant says, it's rainy. One kid might give that a 5 because it was a clear answer. One kid might give that a 1 because it means they don't get to play soccer today. One might give it a 3 because they only have one sock on and they had Fruit Loops for breakfast. Kids are wild, okay? I think we can still better align our metrics of success to the questions we use and the user intent. So if a kid says, hey, voice assistant, tell me a joke, their goal is to laugh. So your success measure could be, how funny did you think that joke was? If a kid says, hey, voice assistant, why is the sky blue? Their user goal is a clear and understandable answer. So that can kind of be your question. We just need to rethink how we measure success with young people. The bottom line here is that you're all researchers and part of the user experience team. You're advocating for your users, and we can't just do that through design, but we need to influence the product from the jump, and that means being part of those metrics conversation, because again, you build for what you measure. So I'm asking all of you to connect to your PM and data science partners, figure out if your current success metrics work for young people, if maybe they need some tweaking, if they are unhealthy for young people or don't support their well-being. I beg you to adjust that with this simple framework. Click. All right, review your current metrics for young people's well-being. There is a framework I like called the Responsible Innovation and Technology for Children framework that can walk you through some of this. Look at your metrics, just compare it against that framework for youth well-being, and adjust any that might actually be detrimental to young people. Again, thinking about DAO, that leads to detrimental product experiences for young people, so adjust your metrics accordingly. Think about the user goal when you're just adjusting your metrics, not just the business goal, and then see if you can operationalize that goal into a dashboard, something that's better suited for teens, kids, the next generation. I don't pretend to have all of the answers. This is iterative. I don't pretend to know everything. I really just wanted to get you thinking. So please, if you have a better way to show how doing right for youth is also doing good for business, please share it with me. Message me on LinkedIn. Come back next year and present. I'm here to grow. I'm here to learn. But most importantly, I'm here for the good of the children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're only going to have time for 1 or 2 questions. So if we could get some hands up, and I'll throw a question out while a runner gets a mic to you. So I think one of the things that you might receive pushback on is we just want one metric for everything. We want to go after this thing, and then I can compare my teams, their efficacy. So how do you push for different metrics among different populations?
Yeah, it's not that we're going to make a metric for every single population. And it's that youth are in a very specific and unique life stage. And again, they're building habits now that last forever. So I think if we are going to push for a different set of metrics, even just a slightly tweaked one, it needs to be for youth, because everyone wants youth growth, except for those of you in enterprise. But it's incredibly critical because their online landscape looks so different from ours, even from Gen Zs. They're growing up in a world where AI is the norm. So we do need to think about how that's going to change their long-term behavior. So I think just really push to think about youth differently, because Gen Z is they're on their way out from being youth.
I love it. And do we have one question from the audience?
Make it a soft one.
Hi, my name's Corey. I have a friend who works at a startup where the founder makes the metrics. So I'm kind of curious, what if you don't have a data scientist or a product manager and you have to talk to the founder and kind of realign that?
Okay, I didn't quite hear that because there's a little bit of echo.
I did not quite hear that either. Would you mind saying that one more time?
What if it's not a data scientist or a product manager, it's the founder who's determining the metrics?
Oh, so it's somebody who's not in DS or PM.
Yeah.
Even better. I think if you know your users, you can think about what is their goal. Do a little research. Say, here's our product. How do you hope to use this? What are your goals for this? And then see if you can operationalize that. I know on a voice assistant, we actually talked with kids about, what do you actually use this for? What do you want to get out of this? And they said, I want to go down a rabbit hole on all these fun facts. So curiosity was really their user goal. How can you operationalize? So I think starting with the user need and figuring out how to operationalize that is a great way to start.
Love it, and we'll take one right here.
Hi. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Arev. I'm a UX researcher at Xometry. My question for you is, so one of the things that you said was one of the biggest influencing points that we can have is at the goal setting process. And that really resonated with me. And my question for you is, how do you manage a situation where you maybe have different sets of users and your goals for those users might actually be in competition with each other? And how do you manage a situation like that?
That's a great question. I think if you have goals that are in competition, then you need to actually think about, okay, who is our core user? Who is our main audience? What is our best growth vector here? And prioritize that. I personally choose to prioritize youth because they are the next ones coming on board. But that's where I think you would do what we saw in the market research presentations this morning of talking to your market research team or your data science team and saying, can we size these opportunities to see which is our best opportunity for growth and then maybe prioritize that.
Thank you. Love it. Okay.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you so much, Emily. One final round of applause. Thank you. So Emily mentioned lots of ways to connect. I will remind you, we also have the lovely Learners app, or website. If you'd like to connect with me, I'm Romeo Charlie Tango, and I have the next 6 months off, so let's chat. In our next talk, I'm also really excited, especially about the implications about how things are changing. So we talked a lot about this collapse of the double diamond in my quick little intro, which often forces us into the same circle and tending to repeat things that we know really well, right? I have a clear sense that I want to build this or have a streak or whatever that might be, but our users are actually hugely diverse and often well beyond where we think about them. So I'm very excited to bring Nicole, a fellow Googler, up to the stage, and she's going to be talking a lot about user groups we don't talk a lot about, in particular NBU, or the next billion users, and how people are leveraging technology differently than you and I might leverage that technology, and what that's going to mean for what we're developing for them. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, thank you. I'm Nicole. It's nice to meet you. So today, of course, we're talking about growth, but I'm not going to be talking about how to acquire those easy, frictionless users. I want to talk about how to drive growth in the real, messy, complex world where the vast majority of humanity actually lives. Every day, we're building products that are based on this invisible assumption, right? We design for this small orange bubble. Essentially, we're kind of designing for ourselves. And we assume that the default user looks and acts a lot like we do. But that bubble, it's just a tiny fraction of the global market. Your next wave of adoption and revenue, it doesn't live in there. It lives outside in that massive gray area. We tend to build our products as if the entire world operates in this pristine, frictionless bubble. We assume that our user is sitting alone at a desk and they have a high-end device and a stable internet connection and a very high level of digital fluency. But the real world is not a pristine bubble. It's crowded and it's shared and it can be chaotic. And your biggest growth opportunity, it doesn't lie in that pristine bubble, it lies in the friction. It lies in intermittent connectivity and shared devices and low digital confidence. The cost of doing research and design in a vacuum can be really expensive. Did you know that roughly half of apps are getting uninstalled within the first 30 days? Think about that. You're losing half of the people that you paid to acquire almost immediately. Now, if you're at a small startup, you might think, well, that's just a product market fit issue. People just don't want what we're building. But if your product is already at scale, you know that your core value prop is working. So when you break into these new growth areas and then you're immediately losing those users, it's not because they don't want your solution, it's because your product breaks when it hits the friction of their daily lives. So we have to stop treating this as just a bad UX problem, and we really need to start treating it as a retention crisis. Because we celebrate when we acquire these users, but then we completely ignore the fact that they're abandoning the app like almost right away. Growth at scale is not just about reaching new people, it's also about retention. And if your product is not resilient enough to survive outside of that pristine bubble, you're simply not going to grow. And no amount of marketing spend can outpace a product that just doesn't work in the real world. So why are we failing to retain users? Well, for one reason, we heavily rely on demographics to tell us who our users are. And to illustrate this on a very human level, let me introduce you to two women that my fabulous colleagues met during field research. They are Maria and Joanna. On paper, they're the exact same person. They're the exact same age, they earn the same amount of income, they have the same level of education, and they're literally neighbors. They live near each other on the same street. And they both had just gotten their very first smartphones, and they were terrified of breaking them. By every demographic metric that a product team would use, they're identical. Within a year, Maria, she leaned right into exploration of her phone and using the internet. And she moved from basic communication on her phone to using it for more advanced things like online banking. And she even landed a new job that she found through her brand new social media account. So she's the success story that we usually see in our data, the user who naturally progresses. Joanna, though, on the other hand, she never truly escaped the anxiety of that first week with her phone. She would hold her device and say, I don't want to mess anything up. I can't afford to break it. So for Joanna, the phone, it's not just some magical gateway to a new job or a better life. It's this incredibly expensive, fragile object, and she's really terrified of ruining it. So she remained a passive user, and she's relying almost entirely on her daughter to help her navigate the basics of the phone and her apps. Now, she has the same needs as Maria, but she lacks the on-ramps to get there. If you design a product based on demographics, you're going to be building for an average that just does not actually exist, and you're going to completely miss Joanna. Now, you can get away with demographic targeting when you're small. When your audience all looks the same, you can survive on it. But when you scale up, that's going to force a pivot. And if you want to win a massive market, you have to drop the demographic buckets. Because at a global scale, demographics really hide the friction. They completely obscure the actual everyday hurdles that people are facing when they pick up your product and they want to keep using it. This is a rice paddy in Nepal. And you might be wondering, why am I showing you this picture at a UXR conference? Well, before I entered tech, this was essentially my office. I was a regional director for the Gallup World Poll, and I was managing research teams across Asia Pacific to conduct these highly rigorous, face-to-face, interviewer-administered surveys that we conducted actually right inside people's homes. And we didn't just talk to whoever was available. We had to use these very strict probability sampling procedures to select a village, and then from within the village, a household, and then only one respondent from within the home. And all of these methods that we used, they would ensure that the data were then representative of the larger population. And never, ever did we ever use any demographic quota sampling. And doing that kind of research, it really forces you to see how diverse populations actually are living. And so then when I transitioned into the tech industry, I noticed a massive disconnect. The qualitative researchers that I was working with, they were uncovering these deep behavioral insights in the field, but our broader industry was still sizing markets and building products based on these static demographic buckets. We would assume that youth, they're all tech-savvy experts, and rural users, they're all novices. But my background told me that simply wasn't true. And while my core perspective, I'm coming to you with this international perspective, honestly, these principles apply to any high-friction environment, whether it's a family who's sharing an iPad or a new employee who's struggling with complex B2B software. It's all about human behavior in the face of technology. And to actually measure that behavior, to take that nuanced reality that our qualitative researchers at Google were seeing in the field, and then to quantify it, we put to work those rigorous survey methods that I had relied on during my time at Gallup. And we conducted a very large, multi-country survey where we surveyed 13,000 respondents across 13 countries, and then we pooled all of that data together, and we ran a segmentation analysis. And the key is this: we didn't tell the model what to look for. We didn't predefine any groups based on age or gender or income. We just stepped back and we let the data group itself naturally. And what we found were these 3 behavioral types of internet users, not people that were tied to some kind of demographic grouping. And the first group is the novices. These users have low digital confidence, and they're going to rely heavily on informal teachers in their lives that are helping them navigate their device and apps, just like Joanna had been relying on her daughter. And they have a very deep underlying fear of breaking the technology. Second, we have the proficient users. This is the middle tier. These users, they've built up enough confidence to move beyond passive scrolling, and they're starting to leverage the internet more as a tool for real progress. They're beginning to use digital platforms for higher stakes utilities, things like finding a job or promoting their small business online, or even earning some income online. And ultimately, they're the users that are actively bridging that critical gap between play and productivity. And third are the expert users. Remember that orange bubble from the very beginning of my talk? Well, that's this group. And to be honest, it's probably most of us in this room, too. We're often building our products and conducting research as if they represent the entire world. But expert users, they only make up a very small fraction of the global population. And when we then mapped these segments globally, we found that all 3 behavioral types exist in every single country that we surveyed. Now, of course, the proportions, they can be very different in each country. But in some countries, those proportions were surprisingly similar. Take Brazil and the US, for example. In both countries, expert users are representing a remarkably similar share of the online population. And an expert user in Brazil is going to behave very similarly to an expert user in the US. Their digital habits, their needs, and their confidence are going to be virtually identical. So this proves that a user's needs can be defined much more by their digital behavior and not about their demographics or where they live. And if your product only works for experts, you're going to be leaving a large chunk of the market on the table. But there's a catch. Once we look past the experts, the users in the US and Brazil, they're going to stop looking so similar to each other, and they're going to start looking quite different. A non-expert in the US, they might be a little hesitant just to try a new app. But a non-expert in Brazil, they're dealing with very intense daily friction. They're highly likely to be sharing their device with other people in the household. And they might be more restricted by very expensive prepaid data plans. And their single phone might be acting as the Wi-Fi router for the entire household. And because of all that, their baseline digital confidence is going to be drastically lower. And I want to be clear, this friction is completely universal. A delivery driver in an emerging market country, they're going to be facing the same exact hurdles as a new hire right here in San Francisco who's learning complex enterprise software. Because friction is friction, right? So if we want to stop losing half of our users in the first month, we have to identify what's blocking them. So let's look at a few common constraints and a few ways that we can unlock them. The first is stalled proficiency. It is incredibly common to assume that if someone has used the internet or your product for years, that they've naturally evolved into a power user. But our global research found that many novice users have actually been online for over 5 years. So they're not new. Their skills have simply stalled, and they're stuck. And this happens in your products, too. Just because a B2B customer has been subscribed to your platform for 3 years, it doesn't mean that they're getting the most out of it. A longtime user, they might be stuck and only using a fraction of your features, and they're constantly frustrated, and they're at a very high risk of churning. To get these users unstuck, the unlock can be a total shift in strategy. We need to move from onboarding them to upboarding them. Right now, we're putting all of our energy into that day one onboarding, right? We dump a massive amount of tutorials on people and just assume that they're going to figure the rest out. But for a user with low digital confidence, that doesn't build skills. It's just going to build anxiety for them. Upboarding is different. It means that we need to deliver continuous, bite-sized learning moments at the exact second that the user actually needs them. And for us as researchers, this could change our jobs and our focus a little bit. We have to stop prioritizing just the first 10 minutes of a user's experience and start studying their entire journey to find out exactly where they need that extra nudge. The second constraint, the shared device reality. We almost always build for a strict one-to-one ratio, one user, one device. But out in the real world, device sharing is a massive social norm. When we researched this in India, for example, we found that the vast majority of the adult population were regularly in some kind of sharing arrangement within the household. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people that are navigating a shared device every single day. Now, it's easy to assume, oh, that just happens in that one specific market, but this shared reality is really everywhere, and it goes far beyond personal smartphones. It's the family that's sharing an iPad in their living room, or a small business that's sharing a single login because they just can't afford any more than that, or even a retail worker who's sharing a point-of-sale terminal with other employees. When we uncover this shared reality in our research, we can expose a critical blind spot in user retention. Shared devices create intense privacy barriers. These users that are sharing, they have a very heightened daily need for privacy from their own family and colleagues. So as researchers, we have to stop testing for these isolated, single users, and instead we need to study the shared experience. We have to ask, how easily can they switch profiles? Are the sign-outs intuitive? And are there clear visual cues that show exactly whose account is active? And if we're not testing for this, our product teams are never going to fully understand why that small business just doesn't trust us with their finances, for example. And the third constraint for today that I want to share is about cognitive overload. When users face a dense, feature-heavy interface, they don't just get confused, they can freeze. And this also is a completely universal experience. Think about a new hire who's logging into a complex enterprise software on their first day. And they're hit with nested menus and 25 tabs and a wall of corporate jargon. They're not going to click around to explore. They freeze because they're terrified that with one wrong click and they might email the entire company or delete an entire database. That exact psychological, physiological reaction that they're having is what kills our retention. So when your UI is demanding that a specialized vocabulary is needed just to find the home screen, the user's deciding, this tool just wasn't built for me. And their perception of it is going to drop to zero. So they're going to abandon it, and they're going to come up with some other workaround. Maybe they'll use a spreadsheet, for example, because the spreadsheet is at least safe. So to get that user out of the spreadsheet, our research needs to push product teams to replace technical intimidation with a more intuitive, visual, and voice-driven path. First, we should test guiding them with motion. When a user's frozen, a wall of text won't help. So we need to try some other options. Test maybe a subtle pulsing animation on your primary button. And it might be just the thing that they need to guide your users to where they need to go in your interface. A second thing we should be researching is alternative inputs. To a user with low digital confidence, seeing a keyboard can be really unnerving. So we should be testing voice interactions, for example. Voice is much faster, and it's just much more comfortable for users, whether it's a novice user who's navigating their first smartphone, or it's a worker who is logging inventory while wearing gloves. And third, we could lead with the visual outcome. So don't give that new hire a text-heavy tooltip on how to configure a database. Instead, test what happens when you show them a preview of the beautiful report that they're about to generate. You're going to eliminate the fear that they would be feeling about that button that they have to click on. So we know some constraints now, but how do we actually execute the research to capture this massive opportunity? Frankly, our methodologies have to adapt. Because right now, we rely heavily on research tools that are built for people exactly like us. And when you do that, you're only ever talking to expert users. And you end up designing in an echo chamber. So to break out of that bubble, we need a new playbook, and there's a few things that I can share with you today that you could pretty quickly put into your own work. The first play is to meet users where they are. And the quickest way to fail at this is by only recruiting through email or other digital channels. Sure, for those of us in tech, those feel like the default, right? But for a user with low digital confidence, whether it's a frontline retail worker right here in the US or a new smartphone user on the other side of the globe, an email inbox is formal, it can be intimidating, and it's often just completely ignored. If you're only relying on email or other digital online outreach, you are only going to contact experts. And I know this firsthand very well from running a lot of surveys. When we use a standard email panel for web surveys, we will get back fully zero novice users in our data. But when we switch to those probability methods of selection with interviewer-administered surveys, well, then we're going to capture a representative proportion of novices of the population, which, as you can imagine, is significantly higher than zero. We have to run our research also on the platforms where users actually communicate daily and where they feel comfortable. That might mean that you're running an entire diary study then on WhatsApp, for example. And it also means we should get out of the UX lab. Partner with community advocates. Conduct your intercept surveys in a break room or on a shop floor and in community centers. To really capture this opportunity, your research methods have to adapt and be just as resilient as your users. And the second play, screen for behavior, not for demographics. We have to stop recruiting our research participants based only on their age, their gender, or the job title. Because, as we know, demographics don't tell us the full picture. Think back to Maria and Joanna. If we had recruited just based on women in their 40s, we would assume that they have the exact same needs. But one is an expert, and one is completely stuck. And we make this exact same mistake in the enterprise space, too. We assume that a senior manager is just naturally a power user of our product, or that every 20-year-old Gen Z employee is digitally fluent. But that 20-year-old could be completely frozen in your complex SaaS environment. So whether you are building for a new smartphone user or a new corporate employee, you need to evaluate proficiency by asking some questions like these. Do they actually know what this feature does? Do they have the permissions and the hardware or the connection to it to use it? And how often do they actually perform this task, and how much help are they getting to get it done? When you screen for these specific behaviors, you're going to stop talking to that echo chamber, and you're going to find users like Joanna or that overwhelmed new hire who are actually stuck. And the third play is ask in the most intuitive way. When we're researching behaviors, we cannot expect users to self-identify some abstract concept. For example, if you ask Joanna a direct question like, do you share your phone? She's likely going to say no. Because to her, when she hands her phone to her daughter so she can do her homework, that's not sharing, it's just living. When we first researched this in India, a very, very small proportion of people would answer yes to that direct question. But then we switched to asking a small battery of questions that were very behavioral, like, does someone else regularly use your phone to access the internet or to make and receive phone calls? Well, then the data completely changed and revealed the actual truth, that a much, much larger proportion of the population were in some kind of sharing arrangement with their phone. And this exact same blind spot applies to B2B products, too. If you want to uncover enterprise workarounds, don't ask an employee, do you share your account credentials? They're not going to admit to breaking the rules. Instead, we need to ask, walk me through what happens when your colleague needs to see this dashboard. So if we want accurate data, we have to screen for these tangible actions and not just abstract labels. Understanding this reality is not just a feel-good initiative. It is the core driver of your company's bottom line. Again, think back to Maria and Joanna. If our research only lives inside the pristine bubble, we're going to end up validating fragile products that only Maria can navigate. But when we actively research Joanna's specific frictions, when we test for shared access, and we measure stalled proficiency, and we study cognitive overload, well, then we're giving our product teams the exact blueprints that they need to build something that's faster, more intuitive, and more resilient for everyone. As researchers, we are uniquely positioned to stop our organizations from building in a vacuum. So I challenge you, please, look beyond the frictionless bubble. Stop just looking at your experts and start looking for people like Joanna, because honestly, that is where the growth is waiting for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think our folks are already on the move, so we'll go straight to the audience. Amazing.
Thank you.
First, I want to say thanks for this presentation. I'm right here.
Oh, hi.
I'm Melinda. I'm a UX researcher, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And first, I want to say, yeah, this really hit home. My father is a Joanna. He's definitely a stuck user, and he's living in rural Romania. And my question would be, when you showed the map, could you, the map of all the countries where you did studies, can you tell me a little bit about what, yeah, that one. So I see, for example, in Europe, there's UK, France, and Germany. And when it comes to geographical locations, can you tell me a little bit more about the reasoning for choosing specific countries?
Absolutely, yeah, thanks for that question. If it were up to me, we would have had 200 countries up there, but we had a specific budget to work within, so I tried to make it as large and representative as possible, and I think these are some of the most populous countries in the world. Of course, China, hard to do research there. Russia, difficult too. So I was trying to get the countries where I was getting the largest representation of the global population. And also at the same time, trying to get at least one or two from each region or sub-region within the world. So yes, I would love to have included other countries, but based on budget and these constraints that we're all under, that was the best that we could do. Yeah. Thank you for your question.
I see one in the far back. And I'll also say on that, definitely keep in mind it with the first talk, what your goals are, because different countries react to things differently. So I work in privacy and security. Germany is one we always include, because Germany is very private. And then inversely, you have ones where it's less safe to be online, or more safe to be online than it is in person. So like India can be your counter to that. But for a study that Nicole's running on search, it might be completely different goals.
Hi. I was wondering, sorry, I'm going to drop everything. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the digital literacy of the individuals. You commented on there that it would be easier for them to receive some sort of screener over like WhatsApp or SMS. So I'm wondering, with all of the phishing scams that often get individuals with low digital literacy, how you kind of balance that and or played into the comfort level of, yes, this is safe, and also this is the potential for you to look in for.
Awesome question, thank you. That's definitely come up a lot in my research, and most of my research in the past few years has been in India, though yes, in these other countries as well, but I've gone most deep in India. And what we do there is we have research teams on the ground who are initiating that face-to-face contact so that there's some level of comfort, and yes, I know this person, they might be from a neighboring village, I feel some comfort, and then we take it to WhatsApp. So there is often that initial contact is made in person. I feel like India is a market where you're most successful when you have that hybrid. Just contacting somebody straight, forget email first of all, and then just going straight away to WhatsApp, I think you're not gonna have that level of comfort and being a known person that you need to really be successful. So I personally, I know tech is pushing us to be looking for the most digital ways to be doing things. And I think that we can, but we should meet, like I said on one of the slides, we have to meet people where they are, and maybe it's starting with that face-to-face interaction and then taking it to the digital platforms. Thanks for your question.
Hi, sorry. Firstly, thank you so much for your talk. I resonated with so much of what you had to say. As a user researcher, I've seen through research over and over again how demographics rarely correlate with user outcomes, but it's something that our stakeholders like to really focus on. And when they don't see those correlations, it makes them lose trust in the results of our study. How would you recommend that we deal with situations like that?
Are you saying that they expect in the study that the outcome will correlate with demographics?
Yeah, they like to see very sort of easy correlations, like people with this income have these behaviors, people with this educational backgrounds have these tendencies, but we don't see that. It's not that neat.
Yeah, it's everything. That is the foundation of this entire 25 minutes that I've been standing up.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, it was very powerful once we had this segmentation that we ran. And I know that like not everyone can go run this multi-country segmentation, but if there's some, and the reason it was powerful is because we got these groups back and the age, gender, everything across groups was the same. So the most novice group was also equally as young and old as the most expert group. Like the age brackets were the same. So that was powerful when I could show them like, it's not age that's driving whatever usage or uptake on your product, it's actually behaviors. So, I mean, it's hard for me to tell you how to get, unless you could run a segmentation, maybe you can, but like having some kind of data point to show them that it's not their demographics that are driving their behaviors, it's something else, I think can be very powerful. Yeah, it's a tough one though. Thank you for your question.
I love it. We have time for one more.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm not a researcher, I'm a conversation designer, but as part of my job, we used to also have to do some little UX research, trying to understand the needs of the users, trying to understand better what is it that they need to do so that we can come up with better designs. And by the way, I'm thinking about switching completely to research because I feel that I'm more there. But I wanted to ask you about one of your suggestions. You were suggesting to ask behavioral questions rather than direct questions. So that to me, when I was thinking about that, it seemed like you need to know the people beforehand so that you know how to ask based on their behavior. Is that the case, or how do you transition from direct questions to behavioral questions?
I think my best example is the one that I mentioned about the phone sharing, where I didn't know them before, but I had the luxury of measuring it several times in a survey. So I got to like iterate on it. And having spent a lot of time in India, I knew that this low percentage of people in my survey who said they shared a phone, I knew that wasn't accurate. And then I went and did cognitive interviewing, and this is, I think, a very powerful tool for pre-survey, where I'm like testing out, kicking the tires on my survey questions, and I realized that nobody thinks of it as sharing. It's just like it's just life. Like, yeah, my friend picks up my phone. Yeah, my husband picks up. Yeah, it's the Wi-Fi router for the household. All of these things. So then I realized, like, I can't use that label sharing. I have to ask, what does sharing mean? I had to break it down. Oh, does somebody make phone calls on your phone? Does somebody use the internet on your phone? Does somebody text message on your phone? That's really what sharing is, right? I don't need that label, which it was too abstract to them. So for me, it was that triangulation of spending a lot of time in the field, knowing that culture, and then also like seeing it fail and getting to iterate on it. That's the method that I had used. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank
that was
you
brilliant.
So much. Oh, that was fun. Thanks.
See you back at the office. Okay. I am very excited to introduce our next speaker. Actually, all of the names that you're seeing today, except this one, are people I did not know, whose DMs I snuck into, and I said, hey, I stalked the shit out of you, and I think you'd be really great for this thing I'm putting together. And the exception is Daniela, who I'm lucky to say is one of my best friends in the world. And when I was 7 weeks pregnant with my first, on GVC, she looked at me and said, I think you're pregnant. And I'm really honored that she chose to be here today. This next talk is about morality and the role of morals in developing whatever we build. Daniela works at Anduril, which either means a lot to you or nothing at all, but I hope it's something you think about as you take this talk in and take it seriously. But also apply this to everything you're doing. Everything we do as researchers, as tech developers, especially here in the first world, has huge implications for everything we're building and who we're building for, if that is YouTube or TikTok or military defense. You're making decisions that affect how others see what is good and bad and how they interact. And this talk is going to be a challenge to you in how you think about what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. So please join me in welcoming Daniela to the stage.
All right. Thank you to Zoe. Thank you for everybody for having me here. Do you know your neighbors? Have you met your neighbors yet? Turn to your neighbor and say, hi, I'm an amazing researcher. I'm ready to do this. Also, for those of you standing on the sides, there's tons of space up here. So come and sit, because we have a lot more here. Come on. All right, I'm Daniela, and I am so thrilled to be here. And I humbly bring you some of my experience and some provocations in regards to the work that we do. So, where are we here? So I wanted to start with a prologue, and I love that Nicole talked a lot about personas, talked about barriers, talked about pain points. I work with so many types of people. This is an example of somebody I recently have been working with through Fred Hutch. This is an Indigenous elder in Seattle who just wants to take care of their lungs. I also have worked with children in Hawaii who may be losing life-saving Medicaid in the upcoming new year. And so how do we actually support this digital transformation that's happening due to HR1? I've interviewed UK border force agents on the English Channel who actually are there to help save lives at sea for people crossing over that may be in danger. In addition, I talk to gamers who want to immerse themselves in fantasy worlds. So there's a great variety of people that I have encountered in my life. This is only just a snapshot, but the one I wanted to land on was this. This last image is today I want to build and share a persona for the service members all over our globe whose primary job is to keep their home country safe and defended from threats. It is our job as researchers to bring these people to the table, to build empathy for them. And although I recognize our global social political climate is a bit charged, I would like us to try to put our scientific hats on, and I would like to continue to be human-minded. And if anyone does not feel comfortable with this topic, that is completely fine with me. Please do excuse yourself and enjoy all these amazing booths. But I also hope that you stay here to engage in this conversation because I feel the conflict too. And with that, I'd like us to present a talk on growth, on NGOs, defense, and in the government. Guess what? User-centered design is becoming more of a table stakes aspect in all of our largest institutions, where research is becoming an extremely important participant in ensuring that the tools and the systems and the service that are being used for defense has a foundation in user centricity. Listen, our governments want our service members to have tools that are deeply entrenched in user centricity, adapts to the needs of our operators, and heavily provides user feedback in the development process. So these are a number of key takeaways. I'm just going to rip through them really quickly, but I just want you to kind of keep them at top of mind, is that regardless of what we think, innovation in this industry, in our industry, has a very rich history of human-computer interaction based in military development. Secondly, as researchers, we have a commitment to building empathy for all users everywhere. This is showing up in every single talk that we've gone to. Thirdly, as autonomy in defense rapidly accelerates, I mean rapidly explodes, it is an imperative, it is our imperative that UX research shapes that conversation. And finally, centering product and program innovation in user-centered design is a must-do. We must bring our users to the table and make sure that they are represented to ensure safety. So let's start with our origin story. You guys probably know some of these stories. This picture may be very familiar to you. Who's seen this picture before? Yeah, some of you. Okay, so during World War II, the B-17 Flying Fortress right here was a pivotal tool known for its role in European campaigns. The pilots were consummate experts. They spent thousands of hours in their planes. They knew everything about their planes. However, this scenario happened far too often. After a B-17 touched down, after a long day of combat, the pilot would flick the control to drop the speed as he always had done. And then within seconds, the massive plane collapsed on the tarmac, getting into flames. This happened over and over again in World War II. Why did this happen? How could this happen? How did these experienced pilots who practically lived in their planes make such a seemingly basic error upon landing? Anyone know the answer? You probably do. So the Air Force knew this was a big problem. So they believed it was user error. Remember, these are experienced pilots, thousands of hours in their plane. So in 1942, a psychologist named Alphonse Chapanis was assigned to the Army Air Force Aeromedical Lab to interview pilots who had crashed their B-17s and P-25s. And through interviews and cockpit inspection, a little bit of contextual inquiry here, Chapanis discovered that these planes had two identical toggles side by side, one for the landing gear, one for the landing flaps. In addition, they were co-located and they were exactly in the same shape, the same size, and the same proximity. So you have a tired pilot coming back after a long day of stressful combat, coming into land. The pilot thinks that he's controlling the wing flaps to control his speed, but accidentally reaches for the landing gear to retract, which then causes this catastrophe. So this wasn't pilot error. This was a design error. And Chapanis, of course, was unable to move the various controls apart on the existing aircraft. So he added an incredibly elegant solution, which we know as shape coding. He modified the landing gear control by adding a wheel-shaped knob and then a wedge shape to the actual wing flap control. Pilots could feel and map what they needed to do without even looking down. And after this, user error disappeared, completely disappeared. Okay. So Paul Fitts, yes, that Paul Fitts that you all know, and Richard Jones analyzed 460 cockpit errors and found that every pilot, regardless of experience or time in craft, made some kind of error while flying their planes. This was recognized not as a problem with the user, but a problem with the actual design, right? So the outcome of this particular work resulted in the realization that human performance cannot be separated from the design of tasks, equipments, and working environments. Service design, right? So this work in World War II in real context in the military gave rise to the discipline that we know as human factors and ergonomics, which simply put is the design for human use, otherwise user-centered design. So before my work at Anduril, I had a very limited view about our service members. Even though my father received his citizenship serving as a lieutenant commander in the Navy, treating injured Vietnam War warriors, this context was completely lost on me. We, as user researchers, believe that we have a mission. We've said this over and over again, to ensure that our users are represented at every table. Our service members, they have also obsessed about their mission. They only care that we cannot lose. We cannot lose. These users are some of the most difficult people I've ever had to interview or to do good design for. They are overly oversaturated. They are often very young with low-tech expertise. They maintain grueling hours and operate with very little agency. You can't get these folks on a Zoom call, you guys. Cannot get them on Teams. You can't call them into the lab and do eye tracking procedures with them. You can barely do a benchmark usability study. And if their commanding officer is in the room with them, it's very unlikely that you're going to get an unvarnished answer about what they're really experiencing. But interestingly, research with service members is also so refreshing. They are prompt, they are honest, they are thoughtful. And the nature of the research means that I have to go to them. My team goes to the actual service members and operators where we get the richest, most contextually beautiful input that helps us design for them. Observations, fly on the wall, contextual inquiry, data collection is super ideal. And just be prepared to run focus groups with 7 to 10 soldiers over a 14-inch screen in like a torrential rainfall. This is kind of the life that you live when interviewing operators. So in this next section, I'm going to talk more about our service members, but I'm also going to talk about the growth vector here. So I'm going to be talking about UXVs, and many of us know what unmanned aerial vehicles are, so that's a UAV, but the X could stand for UGV, which is a ground vehicle. Imagine something that's driving, something that's moving along the ground. A surface or underwater vehicle is known as a USV or a UUV. In general, I'm just going to be talking about UAVs, so just forget about that stuff, but I just wanted to let you know there's a wide spectrum of what we could be talking about here. So I'm going to show this little video. This is not an ad for, oh, here it goes. Play. Where do I go? Oh, shucks. Okay, imagine a drone flying over rural Rwanda. It's not an ad for Zipline. Maybe. But it is something that shows that billions are being poured into developing fully autonomous systems, pushing the boundaries of drone technology. Don't worry about it, backstage. Thank you so much. So drones were once restricted to these tiny little quadcopters, like battery powered. You've seen them. Kids put them up in the air at the park. They crash into trees. They end up in random places. One of my friends, oh, there it is. Wonderful. One of my friends got a drone and was flying it over the Puget Sound. I live in Seattle. And then it just left. And she never could get it back. She said it went back to where it was made. So it's very interesting because the drone industry now is encapsulating commercial and personal as well as defense. This particular picture shows the evolution of UAVs. And this is interesting because this idea of unmanned vehicles is not new. In 1916, during World War I, the first UAV was called Britain's Aerial Target, which was operated by radio control. But go all the way through to 2005, and now UAVs are being used to assess damage after the powerful Hurricane Katrina. Currently in the United States, drones are transporting kidneys for transplant between hospitals. In Madagascar and Papua New Guinea, drones transport TB test samples, dramatically reducing diagnoses from weeks to days. And all of this rapid expansion and advances is greatly, greatly accelerated by developments in AI, machine learning, and computer vision. These developments allow drones and UAVs to perform very intricate missions, operate more precisely, and collect and process data more quickly. So for reference, you guys know that the World Cup is coming to the United States, right? Anyone going to a World Cup game? Yes. All right. So FIFA and the government, in yellow here, right now, for reference, in 2026 is spending $1.1 billion on anti-drone protection in US World Cup games. NFL stadiums have already tracked a 4,000% increase in drone flights and expected that the World Cup will have an order of magnitude larger. So that's in yellow. All right, let's compare it to the rest of the stuff. The total drone market is almost $70 billion globally across so many sectors. Law enforcement, defense, commercial. Of that $70 billion, the global military market is $20 billion, and the US spend is about $17 billion. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, right? In 2027, regardless of the requests for budget are approved or not, the Pentagon would like to triple spending on drone and related technology to more than $74 billion in 2027. So this is the largest investment in drone warfare and counter-drone technology in US history. Add 20 or 24 billion for the global market with the expectation for more growth, about $40 billion. And the commercial and civilian drone market is also exploding with the expected spend of over $20 billion in 2027. So you guys are getting this. This is a growth market if you ever saw one. So I'd like to make this more concrete for us. The Ukraine conflict has seen widespread employment of UAVs, which has literally fundamentally transformed the way forces plan and execute. Ukraine has spent more than 4 years at war, and this war has turned this country into one of the world's most leading innovators in battlefield drone and robotic systems. Ukraine actually established an unmanned system force in 2024, which is trying to reshape Ukraine's approach to forcing Russia into peace. This is super tech and data heavy, with hundreds of companies now plugged into dozens of government-led drone deployments and initiatives. On the defensive side in Ukraine, the goal is to track every single aerial threat and intercept at least 95% of incoming missiles and drones. So early in this talk, I built up the persona of our military members to build empathy for their context, their workflows. And these pictures show our service members at work, in the field, in the lab. I actually think that they keep our coffee industry afloat. I have never seen people drink more coffee than service members. So for autonomous systems, the bottom line up front is that our peacekeepers simply can't keep up. They cannot be expected to manage the amount of information coming at them. We know that this growth is coming, and we have an ethical responsibility to ensure that our users are given intuitive controls of tools to make the right decisions. And this is where we also need to understand this idea of human in the loop, and we call it HITL, H-I-T-L. So in HITL, humans are participants, not observers, in the operation of autonomous systems. Humans supervise and make decisions with autonomy in the context of AI and do their best to ensure accuracy, safety, and ethical decision making. So these systems, these human-in-the-loop systems with autonomy, provide a middle path for human oversight while leveraging machine efficiency, which would require careful implementation with cultural awareness, transparent processes, and acknowledgement they cannot produce universally ethical solutions. All right, so I'm going to take you now to a mental exercise that you've probably seen, the universal trolley problem. Who's seen this? You might have gotten this in like 7th grade. So now let's apply this to autonomy. There's a trolley hurtling down the tracks. What are the ethics of choosing to divert this trolley that's on a track that will kill 5 strangers or go to the track that kills one of your loved ones? As humans, we all have biases. I asked my kids this question, like, what would you do? They were like, of course I would kill the 5 loved ones. But if a computer was making this autonomous decision, we encounter major decision scenarios. We cannot rely solely on machine for life or death situations. Computers need to give us transparency. As well, we know that autonomy may have discriminatory biases, which they were trained on. So a key advantage of keeping humans in the loop is that we balance transparency, we reduce bias, and we enable supervision. Keeping humans in the loop allows for ethical decisions. So Here's a little UX framework for us as we think about the path forward. This kind of research requires a big mindset shift. Traditional UX focuses on usability, desirability, viability, right? Ethical UX, especially for UXVs and autonomies, for use in defense, should also add levers of responsibility, accountability, and consequence. So researchers are actually the ethical arbiters of this discussion. So before any researcher asks this key question: who could be harmed by this? Whose voice is actually missing? Let's talk about these key critical components of this framework really quickly as I wrap this up. Number one, in the framework, your research must be culturally specific. So ethical AI must be applicable. You cannot have your own sentiment. You have to avoid ethical colonialism. Don't impose your ethical framework on other cultures. Secondly, we need to be able to quantify what does harm look like. Focus on clearly defined boundaries. Is it injury? Is there fraud? How will you measure fairness? How will you measure safety? We should have, thirdly, human supervision throughout. There is no autonomous decision without human validations. And number four, designs should be built iteratively. We know this, we believe this, but literally this is the thing we need to keep on saying. Plan for continuous research. Ethics is ongoing, not one time. Context is everything. We must provide culturally appropriate data. Further, a human in the loop is not the same as humans in control. So some of you might have known this bias called automation bias. Have you heard of this? That stressed out operators with a lot of fatigue will automatically default to the autonomy. Designs should be made to resist this automation bias, not just a checkbox. Harm also doesn't end when the mission ends. We need to track what the system does at scale, over time, when there are casualties, when there are misidentifications, when there is psychological harm. This all accretes into harm for our operators as well. So we need to be continually longitudinally reviewing this. And finally, ethical design is never finished. Automation doesn't remove the ethical accountability. We need these ongoing programs. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of unanswerable questions because I'm way over time. But these are probably impossible to answer as well. As mentioned, humans often defer to autonomy, especially under task saturation. So the question isn't really about if a human is present in the decision. The question is, was the system designed in such a way that it makes it easier or less resistant to accept the machine's recommendations? How do we enable scenarios where users can resist the tendency to approve the easiest buttons to press? And these are hard questions, probably unanswerable, but something that we, brilliant researchers of Learners Conference, can all work on together. And I would leave you with this final picture of my dad, Lieutenant Commander Kim. So we thank you very much, and let's have a conversation.
Okay, we are a bit over time, so we're just going to take one question, but then we are both here.
Make it a good one.
Make it a great one. No pressure.
No questions.
Everyone's ready to get back to snack. I see one in the back. Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. My question is, what ethical impact are you most proud of in your work?
Softball, I like.
That's a great question. I love it. So where I work moves very quickly, moves very non-governmental. Government moves very slowly. And so we have a YOLO type of attitude. Startups often do. So ensuring that decisions, especially product and strategy, are data informed is the thing that I'm most proud of. Thank you so much. All right, everybody.
Thank you. I also love that question because it really wraps up so much of what we're looking at in all of these talks today. We build what we measure, we think about what we're doing. AI, one of the things that brought up is if our success rate is accuracy or acceptance, we're going to design for a system that gets people to go, yep, 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 even if it's wrong, because that's what the system is looking towards. So this is your challenge. Set those metrics. There are going to be times where that's really, really, really important. And there's going to be other times where it's important in other ways that you're not thinking about. So take up the challenge. Thank you for challenging us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So in just a second, we're going to go towards our break where you can all mingle, make friends. Romeo, Romeo, Charlie Tango is mine. But I'm really excited to introduce one quick sponsor who is also a good friend. Aaron, who, by the way, has a boat. I don't think they've left on yet. Is going to talk about Outset AI.
I don't personally have a boat, but there's... Yeah, we're thinking about buying one at this point. But anyways, hello, everybody. So I'm Aaron. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Outset. Outset is the original AI moderated research platform. We work with many of you in this room and folks from Microsoft to Google to Uber to many more. But today I wanted to announce one really, really cool thing, visual intelligence. So to date, as you think about AI moderated research, AI has been able to listen, it's been able to hear, but it hasn't been able to see. And as we all know, listening is only half the job. And so today we're announcing visual intelligence where AI can actually interpret visuals in real time. So everything from understanding the emotion on someone's face to being able to interpret digital interactions of a design or a prototype or a live site, or even being able to understand the physical world around us, which means that AI moderation can actually dig deeper in the moment into what was said and done, and can then help synthesize all that content afterwards. So we're the only AI moderated platform with visual intelligence now, so come check it out at our booth. We're way in the back. We're doing $1,000 off of your first recruitment with us, so if you book with us this week. But one more thing. We also are announcing the first of its kind. We have so loved the learners community. We've been a part of this for many years and welcomed here, that we're announcing our very own user conference, an AI research user conference in September called Outliers. We will be gathering more than 800 researchers from around the world, amazing speakers, and even a musical guest, because this will be half music festival and half research conference. So if you want to learn more, it's here in San Francisco, September 24th. Talk to us at our booth, and look out for an announcement for in the next 2 weeks. All right, thank you all. Enjoy.
Great Question is an all-in-one platform for conducting, analyzing, and sharing UX research, with interviews, surveys, and now unmoderated prototype tests. It's perfect for UX designers and researchers who need fast user feedback on their Figma prototypes. It's easy to get started. Just add your prototype link to Great Question to run a study with your own selection of customers via CRM integration, or our large panel of participants. For each test, you'll get video and screen recordings, transcripts of participants thinking out loud, as well as highlights, short, shareable clips of key moments that can be assembled into highlight reels. For those who want insights at a glance, we generate rich analytics from your participants' interactions with the prototype. Timelines show where participants spend the most time or had the most issues. Paths that identify the main routes that participants took through the prototype, and click maps, which help to diagnose any issues with your designs. And putting this all together, our AI suggestions can help you figure out the next steps to improve your designs and your users' experiences. To find out more or book a demo, visit us at greatquestion.co.
And today I'm so excited to announce our official platinum sponsor, Tarek. Take it away, Zach.
Hi, Research Week. I'm Zach, the founder of Tarek. We're incredibly excited to be sponsoring Research Week in a big way this year, and are appreciative of learners and the broader research community for welcoming us with open arms. When we started Tarek about a year ago, we spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours talking to researchers in different disciplines, different team sizes, and across the world. Regardless of budgets or what a team looked like, one thing remained consistent throughout all those conversations. People wanted higher quality participants to power the research that you all do. We built Tarek from the ground up with an AI-first approach, introducing things like conversational profiling and AI-led screening that elicit more from participants so we can catch fraud before it reaches you. I'm excited to meet everyone this week, and whether you're in person or virtual, I'd love to connect and learn more about the work that you're doing. Excited for this week, and go learners. See everyone soon.
days, it feels like we're sketching the new frontier.
What will the next billion users look like?
This is the core question brands are asking. To get to the real answer, we move beyond what we know today.
Beyond tech limitations, beyond business objectives, at Ipsos, we go to the source of the capital T truth, the users themselves.
We need to talk to real users about their real needs.
We're a team of mixed methodologists who address the question from all angles.
We meet you at any moment in the product lifecycle. From the first what if through final launch, we help our clients make the most of the whole process.
But maybe you just need a brainstorming partner or prototyping partner to test a spark of an idea.
Our flexible engagement models deliver exactly what you're looking for.
But what about testing an experience that doesn't exist yet?
Using rigorous and standardized approaches, or inventing entirely new ones, we help you build the unknown. We meet your users and customers on their own level, no matter the complexity.
Our UXers have deep expertise in complex domains and audiences.
Even the most technical or niche target, we can help find them, learn from them, and design for them.
And we can do this anywhere, backed by ISO certification with colleagues in 90 markets.
You get broad global insights without sacrificing deep local nuance.
Let's explore and build this new frontier together.
It sounds so simple to just listen to customers, but people forget. When you think about a product development cycle, it's really long. You know, most companies, it's like a 2-year menu and process to put a new item on a menu.
As our growth has really accelerated into new markets, we've really wanted to keep pace in terms of understanding how are these new customers similar or distinct from the core customer that we've known and loved for all of these years. And Listen has really been an unlock for that. I no longer have to rely on one cohort or one type of customer to speak for our entire customer base. I can get those ideas and those insights from customers on the East Coast, the West Coast, all at once.
Is we actually didn't cut our research budget. What we did is we're just doing 10 times more and being able to move much quicker. We want to create an iconic generational brand, and it starts with deeply understanding our customers.
Decisions are being made faster than research can keep up. So most of them never get tested. What if you could test more without slowing down? This is Seldom. Start by defining what you want to test and describe the problem that you're seeing. Pinpoint where it's happening in the journey and add your product or the flow that you want to test. Choose the personas you want to test with, and Seldom will run simulations and show you what's breaking and where. Test more ideas, explore edge cases, and go into research with confidence. Teams are already using Seldom to uncover issues early and drive real impact. Let us help you today.
6 minutes ago. Excited to hear from Cyrus. This next talk is something that's kind of been alluded to in a couple of other talks today, which is how do we pick our metrics and how do we make sure that it's the right one? I am distinctly a millennial, so I had an experience with TikTok that I think many of you did, which was that I downloaded it, I used the absolute crap out of it, and then deleted it 2 weeks later, which means I was a great acquisition, right? They got a new user. But then I deleted it. And then I looked into it, and about 35% of their users, at least the last time I looked into it, which was admittedly 3 years ago, very quickly delete the app. So really not a great pattern. So how do we push people to think about not just that first step, right? Not just writing your name on one of these sponsor sheets, but signing up and then using the product and using all of the product. Cyrus is going to talk to us today about one way to think about that and one way to push our teams in that regard. So I hope you will join me in sitting your butt in a seat and welcoming Cyrus.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. A lot of echoes. Today we're going to talk about growth through retention. And it's a very interesting topic because efficient growth requires attention to the entire funnel with the retained customer in mind. But today, most acquisition strategies and growth strategies focus on the top part of the funnel. So a lot of the signals that you get throughout your growth efforts tend to be, click-through rates, sign-ups, downloads, impressions, and these are really weak statistical predictors for the lifetime value of a customer. So acquisition alone is not enough, because when you focus on acquisition and only acquisition, you tend to have a hard time recouping the customer acquisition cost and what's required to kind of like establish growth. Sorry, I don't see my slides on the on the screen, so I have to kind of look back. But essentially what you have to do is to focus on the entire funnel, and that effective growth efforts focus on retention, not just on acquisition. And one way to kind of get a better understanding of this is to consider the entire momentum of the way customers come into your product. So if you launch, let's say, a growth effort, whatever that is, a marketing campaign, a viral mechanic or something like that, you tend to have new cohorts coming to your platform, and that we call a recency effect. And recency effects are essentially based on exploration. People want to see what the product is about, they want to see if it's for them, or maybe it's just like a trend. And a smaller percentage of those people tend to go into the acclimation stage, in which they tend to understand what the product is and figure out if this is the value of the product is for them or not. And then a smaller portion of those tend to return. And those who return might use your product 1 or 2 times, but then they disappear. And then out of those, a very small percentage of people tend to actually retain. And those are the people that actually provide your business with value. So essentially, acquisition just measures your distribution strategy, not necessarily the business value that they get from whatever campaign that you're leveraging. So then your objective needs to kind of optimize the acquisition to retention ratio. So when you design your growth efforts, you have to keep that formula in mind, like how do we optimize how many people we get in and how many of them actually produces value for the business. You only need to do this up to a certain point. So when you design how your growth is going to look like, focus on retention and just power all your resources towards that. And you only do it up to a certain point where your customers retain at a higher rate than those who drop out. So retention overtake churn. Once you've done that, you start to see viral effects because retentive customers bring in other people. Incidental customers don't, right? So you want to build up in the first phases of your kind of product launch, and this really applies to startups, is like you really want to build up a retentive user base, and then that will be an accelerator for really widespread growth. So how do you do that? Over the past decade, I've helped a lot of customers through my consultancy and also through my full-time gigs kind of have a geometric growth, we call it. And these are the 5 different principles that I've learned along the way. The first one is that the answer to how you retain customers is already part of your user base. You study users that are retained and you compare them to those who are non-retained, and then you are very aggressive with that comparison. Oh, and now I see my slides. And then, so a couple of different ways you can do this is to take a mixed method approach. You can study people's user journeys, launch surveys, look at behavioral and log data, like anything that's required you to understand which variables differentiates these two. You then take these signals and you put them into statistical models. I think one of the most efficient way of doing this is through something like a logistic regression, in which you categorize people into like retained versus non-retained, and then evaluate whatever you find qualitatively or statistically and against those 2 buckets, like which one has more impact, which one has less, and so forth. And then you leverage those signals towards your growth strategy. And this is a continuous exercise. So this is arguably the best way that you can tackle retention today. The second principle has to do with accelerate time to value. Users decide very quickly. Today you have between like 3 to 7 seconds to demonstrate value. If not, they're just going to go back to Instagram or get distracted again. So the faster you can demonstrate value when someone comes into your portal, the better. And then so the recommendation here is to remove anything that delays that perception of value. So like excessive onboarding, profile setup, KYC flows, and so forth. Push everything out back and demonstrate value as fast as possible, not because you want that customers to stick right then and there, but you're planning for the 2-3 steps ahead, the 2-3 visits that are about to come. If a user just scans your product and they feel like, okay, this is pretty seamless, I get it, the likelihood of them returning when they need that solution again dramatically increases. So initial visits are often exploratory. They're like window shopping. Like you go by a store, you look through the window, you're like, okay, cool, this is great. If I need something, I'll come back here. And you want to instill those feelings from the get-go. The third principle is around incentives. Now, today, everyone offers different incentives, like $5 here, sign-on bonuses, discounts, and so forth. And people are essentially incentive fatigued. What I found out throughout my career is that higher incentives tied to meaningful actions are much more impactful than smaller, easier, attainable bonuses. Because you want to embed customers throughout your product navigation cycle. So guide users towards more valuable behaviors, and then don't give them instant gratification, but like sprinkle out incentives over time. And so here's an example of how this can look like. So the first one is the most common incentive structures that we see today, like sign up and get $5, refer a friend, get $3, and so forth. What happens is that people come, get their reward, and then leave. And you then look at user cohorts en masse, you realize that the customer acquisition cost does not equate the lifetime value of customers who retain. So this type of incentive structures don't really encourage long-term engagement. A much better incentive structure is to make it hard to get these incentives, but the user has to unlock certain behavior and actions across the platform. So for instance, opening a checking account, transferring funds, and then earn $100 is much better than sign up and get $5. Now what you do when that happens is that you weed out a lot of people who wouldn't be your customer anyways. And then you take additional steps and build onto that incentive structure. So for instance, now you can transfer that money in from the checking account into a savings account and watch your money grow. And then you get another $50. The key here is not to give that $150 upfront, but to sprinkle it across 3 to 6 months, because that makes the user come back to the platform, see the money grow with the interest, and then get the bonuses. It also gives you a reason to kind of signal that, hey, something happened on the platform, you earned part of your reward, and so forth. That 3 to 6 month time period gives you the window to retain a customer. This is much better than just giving out a quick incentive, have them come, give a $5, and then you never see them again, which is most often the case. So the goal here is to encourage meaningful engagement and retention with higher incentives and without people who wouldn't be your customers anyways. The fourth principle is arguably one of the most impactful ones, and that has to do with embedment. So over here, we want to deepen people's engagement across your entire platform. One thing that always is true, and if you work on a multi-product product suite, you should definitely check this out for yourself, and I guarantee you that it's true, is that the more products a user adopts, the higher likelihood of retention and lifetime value of that customer. So you want to encourage that. And then just like the first principle, the answers, how you do this is already part of your user base, because you have people that are multi-product users. So study those people and then figure out what their user flows and journeys were, and then how you can leverage those signals for new cohorts that are coming in. Engagement pathways and mapping those out is really, really helpful here. I'm more of a quant person, but this is where I tend to really leverage a qual person that's really good at mapping these things, because that will be really valuable assets to both your design, marketing, and content strategy partners. So as users adopt more of the ecosystem, the switching costs rise. It's much harder to get away from the platform, and retention becomes more resilient. I think one of the best examples of embedment strategies is Google Suite, right? Like you can take a Google Sheets, you can pull up some charts, and then you can transfer that to Google Slides, and then from Google Slides you can leverage Google Docs and so forth. So there's multiple different products that all talk to each other. This is what we refer to as an embedment strategy, and it's incredibly powerful. Like retention is exponentially increasing when you leverage these type of techniques. The last principle is cultural relevancy. And this differs between single-player products, a product that a user can use by themselves without anyone else and they get value from, and multiplayer products, a product where they collaborate with other people. Retention increases when the product naturally fits into users' existing behaviors, interests, and communities. Relevancy is a construct. It's very hard to measure, so you have to operationalize it. And throughout my career, I've worked on a framework that I've borrowed from other people much better than me that works really well when you want to evaluate how relevant a product is to an audience, almost some sort of like a product market fit, but for user research. And it can be operationalized as how useful a solution is for a customer, how important it is to have access to it, and how relatable it is to their identity and lifestyle. If you leverage these three different dimensions and scope out future audiences, the likelihood of gaining retention in the targeted audience increases versus just shotgunning, going super wide. These days we tend to leverage demographical variables, but it's simply not enough. Like you have to go down to the psychometric level. And lastly, multiplayer products are very hard to scale. Retention for multiplayer products in its first stages are very, very hard to gain, because not only do you have to convince someone to use it, you have to convince their friends, friends, and friends to use it. And if one layer collapses, the entire pyramid does. So one way to tackle this is to be hyper-focused on one small audience that's highly connected to each other. So for instance, geographic proximity, if you have like a product that requires in-person touch and engagement, it's much better to isolate one geographical area, hyper-target that with whatever growth tactics that you have, and build a very dense network. You might think that, okay, well, this causes a very small user base, but the fact is that that user base is the catalyst for going to the next adjacent community, and then making that really dense and connecting those two and so forth. This is called Reed's Law, by the way, if you ever want to look that up. So there's a couple of things that you really need to focus here. The first one is, like I said, geographic proximity. The second one is to try to hyper-target your marketing efforts towards friends of friends connections, and then their friends. Don't go out like on the left field, but focus on the users you have and build out this social graph. Existing social clusters and communities is another thing that you should target, leveraging the 3 dimensions that we mentioned in the previous slides, and then really make tracking network density as part of your KPIs. This is really hard, but once you have really dense clusters, you're going to have really, really high retention. The network and the product is going to be very defensible, and it's going to be really hard for a competitor to penetrate your networks, because again, they have to come, it's not only one user, but then their friends, and it's kind of borderline impossible, which is also why you see peer-to-peer networks, so other multiplayer products dominate different geographical areas. So for instance, Venmo is dominated on the West Coast and the North Pacific. Cash App dominates the South and the East, because it's just borderline impossible to penetrate the network if it's already dense. And lastly, I would like to end up with this quote. Whatever is produced in haste goes easily to waste. So meaning that if you want to build a really robust user base that generates viral effects, where people bring in other customers with 0 customer acquisition cost, you really need to take time to actually build a small user base that's highly retentive. You might think that's not, oh, we only have this many users, but those users are what's going to bring in other people, and then you will experience geometric growth. And right on time. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Hands up very high. Amazing. Where are my runners? There we go.
Hi there. My name is Araam, and I'm a growth researcher at Coinbase. Is there echo? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
OK, cool. I'm interested in like that 2x2 chart that talks about like a bad incentive and a better incentive. And based off of your presentation, you're saying that we should maybe design our incentives with a little bit of friction so that we acquire more quality users. And I very much agree with that. But I'm thinking about our stakeholders and our product partners who really want to increase that top of funnel acquisition metric. So how do you think we get buy-in from our PMs and other product partners to really invest in these more elevated incentives?
Just run an experiment. Just like have 2 campaigns. One does these incentives that we see everywhere, like refer a friend, get $3. And then have one that's much more challenging, but with a higher incentive. And then tell them that we're going to look at the results a year from now. If they're really good product people, they're going to have a hard time objecting to that, because it's a very cheap way to get really good strategic direction. So I think that would be my recommendation.
Cool, thanks.
So much of this comes back to you build what you measure, right? Like, what are we actually going towards? I remember hearing about a product manager at a major social media company, and they made their entire career every 6 months making an ad really big and then making it small again. And every time, people got really excited because it got all these clicks because people thought it looked weird. And then as soon as people got used to it, they take it back to the other one. And it took a really long time for somebody to step in and be like, this probably isn't making us the money it should be making us. And that is part of our job as researchers, to say, hey, is this really what we should be doing? Is this really getting people to engage and buy from these ads, or is it just clicking through? But it's a fun part of it.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Thank you.
Hi, I'm curious about how do you balance focusing on retained customers, like that smaller subset of quality customers, versus potentially risking missing customers who are at the edges of the spectrum, but that really could accelerate adoption because maybe the market is shifting. So it's kind of like the classical, innovator's dilemma.
So what was the question?
Would you mind doing that one more time? Sorry.
How do you balance focusing on your retained customers that you're very familiar with and that you think will be sticky in the platform, versus those other customers that are at the edges of the spectrum? So they're maybe not as popular and you're not focusing on their needs, but you could risk missing out on a trend or a wave by ignoring these customers at the edges of the spectrum.
So like emerging customers, or like what's the next sticky segment that's not sticky today?
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think if you study your user base, all the cohorts that come to your platform to begin with, you kind of start noticing these trends, because this exercise of studying customers, studying retained versus non-retained customers, is not like a one-time thing. It's like an annual thing. Like you always need to kind of keep comparing those two, and that's when you start your retained customers changing year over year. The customers that you got like 5 years ago will not be the same ones as you get like in 5 years, due to the changing landscape, the product environment, and the service and offerings to customers. So I think the answer lies in continuous evaluation, because then you get signals of, oh, actually, like we get these customers that are new and they have a different need versus the other ones. So it's the short answer is just continuous evaluation. Yeah.
Awesome. You were dead on time. And we have been over in everything. So thank you so much, Cyrus. It was great to learn with you.
Thanks.
And we have our last speaker for today, who is going to poke around the corner. Amazing. It's like, where'd he go? I'm really excited to introduce Danny, who's going to be talking to us about a user-led growth model. I think we talk a lot today about how the researcher can represent other people. And one of the things Danny's really pushing us on is, what would it mean if we didn't get in the way? And how do we empower the user to do it on their own and give us something else to work with? So I hope this, again, challenges you to think about your role differently and how you can leverage folks very differently than you might be doing today. Please welcome me in joining Danny. Welcome. Flip that around.
Hi, everyone. The reverb in here is so extreme. I thought we could just take like 15 seconds to just relax before I get going. Oh, I see. It's all their fault. Oh, well. I didn't get a clicker. Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Spitzberg, and I'm a staff researcher at UC Berkeley in the Haas School of Business. And I've spent the last 10 years doing UX research for a cooperative economy in different capacities. This talk is about a rapid model for product development, but a slow and steady model for business growth. But also, how's the sound so far? People are okay with this? Okay. If you want these slides later, here's the link. You can follow that and get the Google Slides after the talk. So also take as many pictures as you want. I don't mind. Let's start off with some perspective from history. We're going to cover a few decades in a few minutes, and then we'll try to frame and motivate this user-owned growth model. Both of my grandparents were both compelled to fight in different wars and had to migrate under duress a couple times. And they had very mixed feelings about war, as I hope most of us do. One became a town doctor after and tried to really do right. Pictured here are not my grandparents. The people manning this crew, they were the enemy at the time. And this crew was one of many in a first major experiment in aerial bombardment. In the early 1930s, way before World War II got started, Germany was already testing and developing new technology in Spain. And their first target was a village that they picked here in the Basque Country region. And these were the results of that experiment. The painter Pablo Picasso was so shocked and so stunned by what he saw in that village that he immediately started on a new giant painting. Perhaps more famous than any PowerPoint slide is this painting called Guernica, named after the village that was destroyed. And it's now currently in the United Nations as a reminder and a condemnation of aerial bombardment. Just a few months ago, the new Pope also joined in and said, we really need to stop aerial bombardment. But 89 years later, innovation for war continues. And let's focus still on this moment in this region. Technically speaking, the aerial bombardment was a huge success for the Germans. And strategically, it helped Franco grow his nationalist army and take control for 40 years, keeping Spain out of World War II for the most part. Then, this man, Jose Maria Arizmendi Arrieta, was sent out to a small town not too far from Guernica. And he became an educator, and he too started experimenting, but on a different model of vocational training. He started a school that eventually the students decided to start a cooperative because they knew the needs of the village in this northern region of Spain. And their first product in around 1953 was space heaters. They started manufacturing small paraffin heating lamps for folks to stay warm. And they kept it as a cooperative because the workers wanted to decide what they built, and they wanted to share in the risks and the rewards as their business grew. Today, Mondragon, this cooperative, now employs 80,000 workers and has over 100 different businesses within this federation, still in the same region where the priest himself was teaching. And they have businesses ranging from solar power to robotics and elder care and credit unions. And their model of rapid product development, but slow and steady growth, is very complicated. So what I'll try to do in the rest of this talk is share a few lessons using more modern examples. For a little more perspective and a little more history, a few years ago, I gave a talk at the Learners Conference in New York about how our secret job as researchers is to try and set a new or better standard. Standards help collaboration and production, like, for example, with shipping containers. And because engineers we work with really value and follow standards, we as researchers can influence what's seen as normal and what gets built. But now in 2026, the field of UX research is still deeply conflicted. A lot of us have heard or have said the phrase, oh, my job is to advocate for the user. But on the other hand, our paid job is to deliver outcomes for the business that pays us. So this tension is hard to extract, and the users that we advocate for, do they care about business growth? Most of the time, when a user values and maybe pays for the product, it's only a matter of time until the company goes public or gets acquired, and the users have to start questioning things all over again, and maybe we'll be out of a job or we'll try to catch up and pivot. So this model I'm going to walk through hopefully lays out a framework for us to see how users could care about the results of growth. I'm going to go through this user-owned growth model, which are also a set of skills that we as researchers can use to shape the context in which we get our work done. Hopefully we can try and resolve some of this core conflict between users and the business and move our field in a better direction together with the users. Also, these steps are additive. So if you use just one, fantastic. But they do build on each other. So if you're able to take it as far as you can, then you'll see some dynamic between them. The first is about sharing roadmaps. The second is about cultivating proposals. And the third is about actually including users as owners. I'll share a few examples from companies and businesses I've worked with, as well as some that I've advised. And I'll really try to stress some of the negative stereotypes of democratic approaches where everyone's sharing their opinion all at once, and it's a nightmare, and the founding team's getting burned or burned out and decides that they'll just use their authority to clamp down. And then I'll also name a few keys for success in each of these steps. So, sharing roadmaps. Subvert is a new platform that's actually launching this week. It's a streaming platform for musicians that already has 20,000 members signed up. And its founder, also inspired by Mondragon, says he's building the Mondragon of music. And you can get a booklet if you sign up as a member. One person read the booklet, realized it was mostly AI. He had a big back and forth with the founder, got very upset, and that was in public. But the members-only forum on Discourse is even more tense. One person challenged the founder and said, you know, you post on this forum with more authority than anyone, and it's not like I've ever seen you change your mind based on community feedback. So the cooperative structure of one member, one vote, people aren't going to vote, they're not going to comment, and they're not really going to care about much when this structure is the way it is. As one person called it, a forum from hell. By contrast, there's another platform called Arena. It's for curating images and links and all kinds of digital material. It's kind of like a next level Pinterest. And for example, a marine biologist collecting images related to coral reefs. People love this platform so much that out of the 40,000 users, 20,000 are paying for premium. And the roadmap is open for everyone to see. Folks are fairly specifically digging into the API. It's supported a giant ecosystem of other applications. And when someone approached the core team to update the whole user interface, they said, sure, let's go. Why not? Because they could see that the risks were very low for spending all their money and all their time for a few months. Why? Because the founder, as he explained to me, says, we're in the office. This Discord we have, we're also users of the tool. So 85% of the time, I'm going to agree with what people suggest, because I understand what it's like to collect images and try to make some sort of knowledge collage. So from this first point, we can learn that a product roadmap is a very tractable place a lot of us already probably have experience trying to intervene in and influence. But as we can learn from the Subvert case, a forum is not enough, with especially the negative stereotypes abound. And you need to have some kind of moderation, like in the case of Arena, where they structured their Discord where they're literally in the office and they're very familiar with what people are raising, so they can respond and resolve conflicts and invest accordingly. OK, next step is cultivating proposals. These are going to get shorter. Stocksy is a platform that's based in Victoria, British Columbia, and Canada. It's a photo platform, but it used to only be photo. Lately, they've added video. About 10 years ago, some of the members who are photographers and videographers said, you know, the content for video is getting really high value. We should invest. So here's a simple illustration of a proposal floating. The board of the company said, OK, interesting. The staff ran a cost-benefit analysis. They shared that back with the, at the time, 1,200 or so photographers and videographers to consider. They said, let's do it. Let's all invest. And after a few years, it paid off. And now Stocksy just last year issued $9 million back to these now 1,800 photographers and videographers because they sell video as well. This is a much more complex version of the governance system. They recently removed the cap on new members, which allowed them to add some more folks and be more selective. Whoops. Well, for time, I'm going to speed through. Without good facilitation, though, you can still have great proposals that go nowhere. These are a group of folks who shopped for Instacart and really quite liked it, even early in the pandemic. And they studied their earnings, they studied how the app works, and they said, we have some ideas. This gentleman on the leather jacket on the right actually quit Instacart, had a town hall with them in front of the headquarters and said, let's hear your ideas. You probably know better than we do. I don't believe it went anywhere. They wrote it all up. Sharon here shared her personal story. And imagine this missed opportunity. If we had people doing our jobs better for us, or at least said, just steal my ideas, please. I really do want to shop for Instacart, but. So you need governance, you need facilitation both. And without good governance or with hostile facilitation, proposals don't go anywhere. Lastly, and this is the simplest but the most complex point, including users as owners. Etsy went public in 2015, the marketplace for small crafts. And 6 years later, they raised the fees from 5 to 6.5%. The sellers flooded Reddit, were outraged, and went on strike. Tens of thousands of sellers said, we're not doing anything on this platform for over a week. Even the CEO, founder of Etsy said, I support the strike. This is getting ridiculous. Is it time to build a better marketplace? But the company never did anything, and the strike ended without any clear impact. So, whoops, I'm so sorry. So, some of the strikers, they decided to start their own platform because they saw that the owners makes the decisions. And maybe in a few years, this new platform called Artisans will show some success. So far, it looks like around 14 years is the going rate for one of these slow and steady growth efforts to really get traction. And lastly, my favorite example is GroupMuse. GroupMuse is a platform for musicians to host concerts, usually in living rooms or in kitchens. In the early days of the pandemic, they had to go online because of restrictions on meeting in person. They pivoted to streaming. They created a fund for musicians because the founders themselves were musicians, and they knew intimately well what it was like to try and make a living. Somehow they made it work. They converted the business into a cooperative so they could continue to make decisions this way. But then they went and added a second class for the musicians who are not running the platform but using it. They asked 10 of them, please come up with your own model for governance and for finance. How do you want to be compensated? And so at this point, again, growth has been steady but slow. There's a lot of churn where a lot of newer musicians who come on the scene do maybe a bunch of shows and then they get more professional and do fewer. But GroupMuse looks like it's here to stay, and the people who own it also are the ones who run it and also the ones who use it. So for this last point, two key for success bylaws. Whatever you get for compensation, whatever you get for emotional attachment or for monetary reward has to be built in or it's not guaranteed. And just to summarize, here are the points. I'm going to mention briefly one last story, and then I'm going to wrap. Another company that's now done was called Lucas Aerospace. It was 80,000 employees in the UK building parts for jet engines and bombers. The war effort in the UK was declining. They tried to cut wages, but keep production going so that the management could still show that they were having the right bottom line. Workers were very upset. They started writing a newsletter. They started arguing to shift the company to other means, what they called socially valuable production. They came up with this really cute, really interesting idea that you've probably seen versions of today, where a bus can go on the road and on the train tracks back and forth. They prototyped it. They had a whole show for it. And they tried to collate this, like good researchers, into a 200-page report saying we should transition. The war economy is not what it was, and we could do better for the people who live in our communities and abroad. But management didn't listen, and the end of that company is basically the only thing left really is this dumpster was the last valuable piece of real estate. But they are 80,000 employees, many still alive, many still featured in documentaries, in books, teaching younger engineers other ways. So to end, from 2026 going forward, as researchers, I know our profession is changing and growing like we can see in this conference. And if we do our work in conventional contexts where we're trying to advocate for the users on the one hand and translate our understanding of their needs into business outcomes on the other hand, hopefully this user-owned growth model offers a few practices you can use even without changing the legal or financial structure of the business. And hopefully we can connect with users who care about, who value, and who might even help steward and run the business that we're part of alongside us. I hope you'll try out some of these practices, and I hope we can learn more about how they work and maybe come up with a better direction for the field than what we've seen from our peers in law and accounting and engineering, where it seems to tend a certain direction. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your conference.
Amazing. Questions? Okay, while you guys think about it, I'm going to throw you one, which is, oh, perfect. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. Thanks so much. It was really interesting. You're right, it's a lot of reverb. I think this is true with a lot of products, the tension between your existing users as constituents as well as your desire to have new users, especially with user-owned products. I can imagine there being some kind of NIMBYism of keeping new people from using the product or growing in ways that would expand the market. Have you seen examples of that, and how do you think about balancing that as you try to grow product?
There are a few examples. I think that tension comes from a place where the users and the workers are maybe not owning and controlling the business. But with the case of Stocksy, the photo and video business, they have branched out because a lot of the staff have actually become content contributors. And a lot of the content contributors have become staff. And then they mix some of their industry knowledge, they subscribe to all the magazines, they go to the trade shows, and they'll say things like, you know, documentary style videography is actually where it's at. We need to cut into the A24 market, for those of you who know that aesthetic. And other folks will say, no, I think that's saturated. So yes and no. There's a really productive tension when folks are well-traveled, but still have their incentives aligned.
Hi, Jordan. The cynical, first of all, I agree with what you're saying. I think this is the way the world in tech should move. However, the cynical part of me sees that a lot of the examples you give, the negative examples are the bigger companies and the names that I know, and the good examples of this are the ones that I don't know and just have promise of, oh, it could take 12 to 14 years for them to grow and take over. I know YouTube pisses off their creators, Twitch pisses off their creators, and there's all sorts of alternatives that claim to help these creators more, but we still have Twitch and we have YouTube, we have Etsy. So, how do you square those two?
Me personally, there are a number of corporate capital strategy folks, venture capital folks, a good number of law firms that do sort of fractional counsel for these businesses that have said, you know, if we want to see the long tail of value for the business, we might want to consider that time horizon and try to capture or extract that value by shifting ownership. One of my favorite examples was something I was involved in 2017, which was trying to take Twitter off the stock market and turn it into a public utility, because journalists at the time really, really, really valued Twitter. Other groups did too, for their own purposes, epidemiologists and designers. I know design Twitter was its own snake pit, and they went for a vote. We had a shareholder resolution that got seriously considered. So there are some of these folks who are, I guess you could say, just reading the news. Now Spirit Airlines, I think last Saturday, officially dissolved. Yet again, there's a guy down in LA who's a voice actor, and he's trying to get the flight attendants union and the pilots union and some of the customers to pool enough money together to take that airline and recreate it as some kind of limited cooperative. So I think the real tension is that so much do these groups, these businesses persevere for that time horizon. It's, can we find businesses that are currently valuable and could be more valuable if ownership and control was shared through these practices? One of the reasons I wanted to really stress these practices are additive and you can do them now is because a lot of us already work with sharing roadmaps. A lot of us already work with some version of co-design. You can cultivate enough of a user interest, enough of a base of potential co-owners through things we're already doing now, and maybe a business, like I said, that's already good could put itself in some kind of trust or other sort of model that would secure its purpose. Sorry to run on a little long, but I hear your tensions and I hear the time horizons, but I think there's opportunities we can do within the next few months to try and experiment on this, wherever we're at.
Well, thank you so much. We're just at time. I believe Danny's here for a little bit after, so please come up, say hello, where there's no reverb in the real world. Guys, it is so weird on this stage. Hats off to our speakers. If we could give Danny one last thank you. And then thank you to you all. Big thank you to our sponsors. Thank you for coming today, and I hope we'll see you all tomorrow. I hope you've made lots of great real connections, eaten some good things, and that you'll be ready to do it all again. Thank you.
Round of applause for Zoe.
Modern research is delivering more data than ever, but raw data alone does not provide a clear picture. Numbers alone get questioned. Stories alone get dismissed. For stakeholders to take action, they need both. AI-moderated interviews promise depth at speed, and they deliver. But there's still a problem. Researchers still have to do the heavy lifting to stitch qual and quant together. KNIT takes a different approach. We didn't just build an AI interviewer. We built AI-moderated video questions directly into a quantitative study. KNIT's AI-moderated video questions are dynamic AI-led video interviews that probe in real time, mirroring a semi-structured human moderator. Respondents answer on camera. AI follows up with personalized probes based on what they say. And everything is automatically transcribed, tagged, and analyzed. But here's what makes it different. Those qualitative insights connect directly to your quantitative data. Same study, same respondents, one story. Now you can say 73% rated this as their top barrier, and here's what they said about why it's a barrier. The result? Deeper insight than surveys, more scale than traditional qual, and research that goes from survey to story in a week or less. KNIT. Research at the speed of decisions.
One researcher, one morning, countless sessions. No problem. With Eureka, capture key moments in a single click. Notes write themselves. You stay focused on listening. And when a participant goes quiet, AI moderation steps in with the right follow-up, turning a dead-end answer into your most valuable quote. Headlines break every transcript into scannable moments, so you get the shape of a session in the time it takes to finish your coffee. Automated insights don't just summarize what people say, they connect it to what your stakeholders actually need to know. You set the goals, Look Back does the rest. Looking for a moment you remember but can't place? Discover lets you search across every session at once. themes, patterns, exact quotes in seconds. And with MCP integration, you can do all of this from the LLM tools you already use every day. Less grunt work, more research. Look back. Clarity before the second cup.
User interviews is the fastest and easiest way to recruit participants for research. We're known for fast matching, a high-quality audience, and a simple workflow that researchers love. Start for free at userinterviews.com.
And today I'm so excited to announce our official Platinum sponsor, Tarek. Take it away, Zach.
Hi, Research Week. I'm Zach, the founder of Tarek. We're incredibly excited to be sponsoring Research Week in a big way this year and are appreciative of learners and the broader research community for welcoming us with open arms. When we started Tarek about a year ago, we spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours talking to researchers in different disciplines, different team sizes, and across the world. Regardless of budgets or what a team looked like, one thing remained consistent throughout all those conversations. People wanted higher quality participants to power the research that you all do. We built Tarek from the ground up with an AI-first approach, introducing things like conversational profiling and AI-led screening that elicit more from participants so we can catch fraud before it reaches you. I'm excited to meet everyone this week, and whether you're in person or virtual, I'd love to connect and learn more about the work that you're doing. Excited for this week, and go learners. See everyone soon.